UK Cinema History, Episode 5, The Vampire Hunters, with Yazzie Soufi.
And we're rolling. Welcome to UK Cinema History. This week, The Vampire Lovers, featuring Peter Cushing. Janet Monroe was dire the day the earth caught fire, but she told us where to stand. Professor Quartermass was there in silver underwear. Christopher Lee was more monster than man. Then something went wrong for Ingrid Pitt in a thong. She got caught in a celluloid jam. Then at a deadly pace, a wolfman bit off her face. And this is how the message ran. UK Cinema History feature. Peter Cushing beheads a creature. See cinema nerds fighting. Eric and Yazzie. Barbara Shelley, looking classy, at the UK Cinema History Picture Show from Hammer Studio. That was just a bit of fun, which only the people listening on replay will hear because nobody's heard it. So I guess I'm waiting on Yazzie. So to fill the time while we are waiting for people to show up, I guess I will read aloud from the phone book. No, wait, they don't have phone books anymore. Gosh, darn it. Bummer. Well, this is my worst nightmare in all of Clubhouse happening at once. What if you gave a room and no one came? Okay, I'm going to start pinging people. So, all right, we'll ping Yazzie. Let's see. I like Scylla's point of view, especially since this had a terrible soundtrack, which he will have a chance to go off on just how bad it was. Let's see.
Eric, hi.
Oh my God, you missed our theme song. I wrote a theme song.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Should I sing it?
Yeah,
Should I sing it again?
I don't know. Yes, please. I just got here. I don't know why I was thinking like we're having the room in 30 minutes. Yeah, but I'm here. I'm ready. All right.
That's all right. Maybe we should start over so we don't have like the gap. What do you think?
No, it's okay. We can like wait for others.
Yeah, I was thinking for replays and stuff, but you know what? Nobody listens to replays on this app.
It's okay because we need to wait. They have to like see the room. I know that Vern is in meetings. Still in the meeting.
Too bad. Yeah,
I don't know how long it will take.
Because he had sounded like he was watching the movie. I was kind of looking forward to what he had to say. But oh well.
Yeah, he didn't finish it all. He was keep complaining about the commercial break
that's what
from
he said
the version
yeah.
that he had. But
it's like how spoiled are you?
Yeah, so
I haven't watched a commercial in 20 years.
I told him Yeah, and I said, oh, it's okay to watch the commercials, and it's okay to like even if you haven't finished the whole film, just like come and join the conversation, because we're gonna like go around the B movies and the significance of B movies, and still the vampires and uh the lesbian vampires, and the beauty of the women body, and then how they're used in this. And so you can participate even if you haven't finished. You have something to say, like, don't worry about that. So, but I'm thinking, just because we changed the schedule, because Sila is always on time and he's not here, and I'm thinking maybe they're making the mistake of, like, we're still on the our last week's schedule. Maybe.
Or it could just be that nobody really cares about 1970 lesbian vampire films, which I'm cool with either way. I'll be honest.
Oh, if they come, if anyone comes here or listens to replay, I'm gonna say right now, I'm gonna change their mind, because I have like pretty strong words to say about how important and seminal and significant the role of these movies that people are ignoring, how important they are, like, for not just like in cinema, but culturally, and for society, and for LGBTQ and the lesbians and all that. So I'm all in for that. So if anyone has any doubts and decides to listen to us, bear with us and listen to the conversation, because believe me, I'm gonna convince you. And you're gonna see the value, hear the value, actually. Yeah.
And for the people who are listening on replay, I guess this would be a time for me to go through my corrections, because I did have a couple of people who listened on replay who back channeled me about mistakes I've made in previous episodes. Beginning with the Pink Floyd The Wall episode, after the hard time I gave Roger Waters about generally being an asshole, I never mentioned the fact that Peter Townsend was registered as a sex offender after his credit card was found at a company that produced child pornography. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. My only defense is I don't make notes for this show. I don't think about this ahead of time. They're giving me far too much organizational skill as far as I'm concerned. But that is correct. I did not mention that. Neither Mr. Waters nor Mr. Townsend would probably be people you'd want to have over for dinner. Let's see. Correction from last week when I was talking about Tony Scott films. I said that Enemy of the State was one he made with Denzel Washington. He, of course, made Enemy of the State with Will Smith. No, it was not because I think all black people look alike. It was because I didn't make notes and was just kind of rattling off the names of Tony Scott films and accidentally reversed that one. And Man on Fire was the one I was thinking I was talking about. So those are our corrections. Feel free to keep correcting me. You can either back channel me here on Clubhouse or get a hold of me on Twitter. I'm ETROMMATER, or I'm sorry, on X, that used to be known as Twitter. But leave Yazzie alone, because we need her. So if you've got
No,
got
please.
compliments, if you've got compliments, send them to Yazzie. If you've got complaints, send them to me, because it took me forever to seduce her over to UK cinema history from her other haunts, and the lure of cocaine and hookers can only last so long, you know.
And I'm gonna like correct Eric right now because please, it's not true. Put all the blames on me because I'm the one who's supposed to fact check everything immediately. But I get so emotional and so excited about the films when we are talking about it that some and it shows, and you see by listening to these corrections you can see how much we value our conversations, and they're not just any kind of we're trying to say something new, something that you cannot find like just on your immediate searches online or like that. We are here factually with new ideas and new takes on these movies that are generally ignored by like
Excellent.
even the
Morgan is here.
cinephiles,
We actually
even
have
the
somebody who
cinephiles.
came, and they're actually British.
Yeah, so
I,
please join
I
us.
invited Morgan to speak, even if he hasn't seen the movie, because Morgan has the most soothing voice of anyone on Clubhouse. Like seriously, I can spend hours just listening to him, like explain, a technical point about how Clubhouse works or why my recording is not working. So he's free to speak no matter whether he's seen the film or not. Oh, he's with family. Oh well, family is much more important.
Okay,
Well, at least we have Morgan to keep entertained. So I'm not sure why we moved this up because
exactly.
weren't getting a big enough turnout, and then we dropped from 5 people to zero. So
I'm gonna like
oh well.
ping a few
Mm,
people. I'm sorry that so you can, Eric, you can
okay, I,
start like tell us
I'm
a
gonna
bit about yeah, you can tell us a
no,
bit
I'm gonna say
about
while you
Hammer.
ping people, I'm gonna sing our theme song because I put at least 2 minutes of work into it. So that'll give time for the room to fill up a bit. Anybody who wants to speak, by the way, can, whether you've seen the film or not. I'm gonna individually invite anyone to speak who comes up, who comes in. Although that doesn't mean it's an obligation. But yeah,
Tell us a bit about the
this isn't a
Hammer.
room. Um, okay, all right. To begin, Hammer actually started in the 1930s, but we're not really interested in that version of them because they were just one of many cheap British film studios. Their real start came when they changed owners from uh, the father to his two sons and the set of brothers who were in the jewelry business, who in the 1950s started creating a bunch of what I think are classic, classic uh, horror films. And hopefully at the end of this episode, you will too. So, and again, keep in mind, I don't make notes or anything like that. So all of this is kind of on the fly because I don't put that much work into these episodes, to be honest. But the very first film of this new Hammer was an adaptation of the 19 or the BBC serial The Quartermass Experiment in 1955, where they took the E off of experiment and made it just an X because it was the first widely distributed X-rated film in in Britain. Now, X meant something different over there. It meant only people under 16 couldn't see the film. And before that, it had been used only for a couple of cheap exploitation films. But Hammer was the first studio to actually request and use in its advertising an X rating. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the Quartermass films because while they are very, very important to directors like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and and Martin Scorsese, they are not horror per se. They are more of a sci-fi monster. You know, think King Kong meets Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But that was how Hammer got its start. Hammer got its start in horror when it started in 1957. It decided to do The Curse of Frankenstein, starring Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein and Christopher Lee in one of their many, many teamings. And Christopher Lee was the monster. And this would also start Christopher Lee's frustration because their use of Christopher Lee for both the Dracula films that they would make and for the Frankenstein films they would make was a bit like the shark in Jaws. Less is more, so they wouldn't show him very much. I believe he only appears for 7 minutes in the Frankenstein movie and only 9 minutes in the follow up, which was Dracula. But there was a lucky thing that happened that set Hammer on its way. Number one, it was the very first film in the horror genre ever filmed in color. Even the Universal films had all been in black and white. And so they were able to have blood in red on screen for the first time. And so it caught on also in the
And
United
all
States where it had
right.
started.
Sorry, uh,
Mm-hmm.
sorry to interrupt. Like, didn't they do this to all the months? I mean, they kind of revived all these classic monsters into brought them, like revived them into colors. In another word, if we can say, like, not just
You read my
vampires or
mind, Yazzie,
all.
because you read my mind, Yazzie. Because the second thing that was lucky was that Universal was very sue happy about any of its property. So the first thing that they set about doing for the Curse of Frankenstein was the scriptwriters refused to read the book that it was based on and created their own story so that Universal would have nothing to sue over. So it was a uniquely British look at the legend. Uh, the second stroke of luck, of course, was that they had the wonderful Peter Cushing, who Yazzie, as a Star Wars fan, knows
Love.
as Grand Moff Tarkin. But but Peter Cushing would appear in nearly half their films in some way, shape, or form of the pure horror genre. But they also made black and white films that were psychological dramas. For instance, they made The Nanny with Betty Davis. They made which I think is an underrated film. But they also made a version of the Hounds of the Baskervilles with Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes and Christopher Lee as Henry Baskerville or Sir Henry Baskerville. But uh, but in 1953 we start on our quest towards vampire films when they made a film that in Britain was called simply Dracula, but in the United States was called Horror of Dracula to keep it from being confused with the Universal version. And yet again, they were afraid of being sued by a very sue happy Universal Studios. So again, they had to create a vampire genre all their own and uniquely British.
So I
So
have another question. I have another question. Sorry. Just because it relates to this part that you're talking. Why there are like so many different names to these? Like, why there's, because okay, for French movies or like for French translations in other languages, I understand, but I don't understand why there are like a blood countess, and then we have Countess Dracula in America. And why, like, the English versions have different names? Is it also related to copyright, or they
No,
change it because
actually,
of
what it
the
had to
audience?
do, no, very simple answer, actually. What it was these were double features in the UK, and so the titles would kind of go together with. So, for instance, Horror of Dracula was a double feature with Maniac. The two kind of flowed together. Well, they were double features in the United States as well, but these were the B features. And so the distributors in the United States would change the title to go with what they were the movie they were the B features for. And so that's why you got different United States titles than you did
Oh,
American titles. But the thing is, because those psychological thrillers that they made, those black and white ones, were actually very popular in Europe and in France, they were actually putting those as their main features, where they were the B features in England because they weren't as popular as the horror ones, and they were and in France, just as an example, because same with Switzerland and what have you, they they were the horror films were the B features. They were the tag-alongs, the second films that people would see, and those countries were actually kind of softening the title and taking words like blood and things like that out because they wanted because they were going after an audience that were into these psychological thrillers like The Nanny and Maniac, just as an example. But this would kind of grow more when Universal Studios actually paired with them and started not only distributing but financing some of their films. And that started really in 1963 with a film called Kiss of the Vampire. And the most interesting thing about that is it was the first vampire film that they made without Christopher Lee or Dracula. And so they actually had kind of created a spin-off genre of, of standalone vampire film, of which today's film is the first of a trilogy that came out of that spin-off. So you had the Christopher Lee traditional Dracula films in, I guess, as Marvel would say, one universe. And then you had a second kind of Sony Spider-Man uh, universe of these individual vampire films that and what that kind of freed up is you could have different rules for vampires for these different universes, so you didn't have to have, like you did in the Dracula films, you had to have strictly scientific explanations for anything. There was no magic in them. Well, now we can have magic, reincarnation, and things like that. So whereas vampirism was in the Cushing as Van Helsing, uh, Christopher Lee as Dracula versions, basically a disease that was spread. In these spin-offs, you could have any explanation that you wanted because they weren't guided by those rules. Which leads us to the lesbian vampire film as a genre. Something we discussed last week, which I don't know if Morgan heard the replay last week, so I'm gonna just for since we're being his radio, uh, do a quick summary of. This was actually the first of that genre, which was very popular all the way through Europe. And there's Vern. Hey, good to see you. Okay. Well, I don't have to sum this part up for Vern because he was there last week, but uh, we discussed especially in Belgium and France, there were a spate of these that came out around the 1970s. 1971's uh, uh, Daughters with Delphine Seyring is the best example. However, I rewatched it this week, thinking I would have something a lot smarter to say than, God, that movie sucks. I guess it is historically important to, as far as a queer cinema goes, because it was a major star appearing as an openly lesbian character. But God, I mean, seriously, the only horrifying thing was how bored I was and it's only like an 89-minute movie. So um, I hope nobody watched it thinking that was a recommendation last week. I think I made it clear that I hadn't seen it many years, but no, not a good film. But today's film is. So that brings us up to date on Hammer Horror and how uniquely British it is. Yazzie is going to now speak in terms of uh, the Hammer as a part of the history of B films, and then I'm going to turn to Vern and ask him, as somebody who has recently been going through the noir genre, if he can kind of think of how the B film has influenced that genre, since it's something that he's spent a lot of time studying. I just want to give him a heads up so he's got time to think about that, because we didn't talk about it before the show. But Yazzie, tell us all about the B film and its influence on modern day filmmakers.
Yeah, so the most important thing about the B movies is that uh the budget. We always and what is interesting to me is that the budget part, and uh it is it like, how can you, like, they operate on the lower budget, and with that comes the benefit of, it gives the filmmakers more like creative freedom, and they're allowed to like more experience more, and the like tell their stories through unconventional like narratives, or every the storytelling techniques, their styles. And they might look at the like first watch, or at the like by the first look, they might look cheap too, but we should consider that, especially like, for example, this movie that we are talking about today, so many scenes, a lot of them, the how it explores the idea of dream, for example, here, it how much it affect David Lynch, for example, or uh, uh, Tarantino, or like one of my favorites that he actually pays constant nods and homage to these films, Tim Burton. So Tim Burton, like, he kind of digs these movies. He goes like, he found this these cheap decors and set designs to kind of emerge, uh like his talent, and become someone in the industry, and like hold his significance, and uh his different point of view, and shines through this look at the beginning, especially at the beginning of his career. And where this idea comes from are all these movies with this pastel colors, and how how you can like grab the attention of the audience and tell your story, but with so little that you have. But like, for example, in this movie, just like look at the ball scene that we see. It's it's just the use of colors, the use of cinematography, and just the close-ups, and how like he transfers this idea of the unknown, and the through the looks, just by the looks and the casting. What is important about Peter Cushing is exactly that face, that stone face of him, that he, like, we can see that he fears, and he feels uncomfortable among like when among these women. And that's what I love. And that's like, for example, what someone like Tim Burton does. And you know, actually he made a remake of Dark Shadows, but he doesn't like it because he said that the mistake he made was that he didn't uh, kind of remain uh loyal to that B aspect of the original Dark Shadows, which is like might sound ridiculous when you think about it. Like, why should it? Like, there is an authenticity in the this B aspect of these movies because it makes you grow and experience in different ways that are more powerful, and you can shine there. Then that's what I always liked about these movies, the B movies, because of something else that you can find beneath the surface that, like, we can sit and laugh. The other thing is exactly the entertaining aspect of it. They allow you to sit there and enjoy it and entertain and have fun with them. Like, it's not like they're trying to make a serious movie. No, they they look like this because they wanted these movies to appeal to bigger audience, and everyone come and enjoy watching it. The drive-throughs,
And they're only
and they're,
90 minutes.
yeah, and mostly two features. They were mostly, right. That's what I wanted to ask you. They were mostly show them like two features. That's why they're like, they're not long. They're short. They're like not more than like 1 hour 30 minutes. So you can like just sit, have fun, laugh at the dialogue. Sometimes you can laugh at the exaggerated actings, or like the eyes, or like the sometimes the music, the score, they come like so hilarious, and they allow you to laugh at them. And that's what I also love, because it's we forget
And the
sometimes
boobs.
that cinema is entertainment, and we have to enjoy and have fun first before geeking it out. So that's what, you don't, there's no time for a like 10-minute like shot. No, everything is like so intense and tight and happens quickly, and sometimes funny and full of like continuity mistakes. And yeah, go ahead, watch and laugh, but learn that there is something beneath there too. But first, enjoy it. And that's, I think, so interesting to me always.
Well, before I turn it back over to Vern, I did want to ask, the rear map paintings in this film that's kind of a lost art now, because all of that would be done with CGI. But how beautifully, because they filmed this, yeah, mostly in studio, and it's got all of your typical Hammer, that center staircase and the ballroom and the beautiful gowns and things like that. But the rear map paintings that they would use to give you the idea that the Moors of England are actually Austria, um, which I just think are absolutely gorgeous. And I was watching Yazzie and I watched the same print of this because I sent her a link to it, but it was a restored print, and yeah, just how absolutely gorgeous they look. And but Yazzie, would you say that's kind of a lost art now that everything can just be kind of whipped up on a computer?
No, I don't say that. I think we should embrace it. Like, that's what I always say about like Christopher Nolan. I said it last week too. I said, it's if you have that technology right now to use, and you know how to use it for the best of your storytelling and your script and your style and world build, go ahead, use it. But if that CGI, or like de aging, or uh, any any kind of like technology that you're using make your expensive $1 billion movie look cheap and look like a B movie, and you forget about the main uh like why you were making this movie, and that is lost in that technology. No, that, and then that, that make it ridiculous. Actually, that's funny when like $1 billion movies look and sound like the B movie.
Vern, how's your connection there on the train?
Yeah, actually, I'm on the platform and the train is coming in like 2 minutes. So, can you hear me?
We can come back to you if you want, or you can go now if you think you can keep it under shackles.
Yeah, get back to me because I got to figure. There's two trains coming and I don't know which one is express, so I
So
need to figure
I have
that
a
Well,
out.
question. I said I
I
have
hope I have
many
an answer.
questions. Neo, you have the my question is about the movie poster.
Wait, wait.
Like
So I see
all these Hammer movies. What?
Sonia in the audience. She says she loves this movie, so maybe we should bring her up. She's got a red ticket. Let's bring her up.
My question is about the poster. Like of why all these Hammer movies, the poster has, or like all the commercials and like radio, the press release, why they have nothing to do with the actual story of the film. Why they're, like this this one especially, the poster
Three letters,
has yeah.
three-letter answer. API or AIP. I'm sorry. American International Pictures. This was the very last film that Hammer did with American financing. And the company that they partnered up with was Roger Corman's old studio before he formed New World Pictures, uh, who they had popped over to England to film a couple of the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations with Vincent Price, and teamed up with Hammer while they were there. Um, and Hammer was given, believe it or not, a $400,000 budget, of which they only spent, I think, $135,000 on this film. Uh, the To make the film, and API was entirely in charge of distribution, and of course API was exclusively at that point an exploitation studio, and so all the posters were made up before the film was written, before anyone had actually read the novel based on, which we'll get back to when we start doing the plot summary. Um, and basically, the only things that were known were that it was going to have Peter Cushing and women being beheaded, and so yeah, that's why.
Oh, so that one goes back again to the fact that the studios, they for the copyright, they didn't want to read the books, or they like rather to be more distant from the main source. And oh, okay, but I love them. I mean, they're great works of art, but has nothing. I mean, I can't say enough that how much none of the posters has anything to do with the actual movies that we're watching. They're different stories, and the posters, they're something else.
Well,
Has
AIP used to
nothing to do.
hire the
Like
people who
this
made the
is
novel covers
so
for
funny.
romance novels. That's who AIP didn't. They didn't have artists on staff. They would just hire the people who did romance novel covers. And when you hear this, gosh, I can't remember the name of the documentary, but there's a great documentary with long interviews with people like Roger Corman in it. But when you hear the people who made these posters testify, they were given no instructions whatsoever, uh, and given just a huge amount of artistic license. train there? Vern unmuted. Are you safely sitting on the train there?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe he just
Vern, you
tapped
let us know when you could.
out. Okay, let's do a plot
Yes. So,
summary here
okay.
real quick for Morgan and the people on replay. Do you want to start or should I? All right, I
No,
guess
go
I'll
ahead,
start.
please. Please go ahead. Then I'll
Okay,
tell
so
you. Then I'll tell you about the novel because I love the novel. That is kind of like a Bible for
excellent,
the vampire
excellent, excellent.
lovers.
So I
Yeah.
guess that's a good place to start. So this is based on a novel by Sheridan LaFau. Is it Fano or Fano? Doesn't
But
matter. Called Carmilla.
Sheridan LaFanu. Yeah, it's Irish, but his name is
Sheridan
so French.
LaFanu. Okay.
Yeah, Sheridan
Sheridan
LaFanu.
LaFanu. Oh, that's a fun name to say. Sheridan LaFanu. Okay. Anyway, and it's the first of three films in what's called the Karnstein trilogy. The other two being Lust for a Vampire and Twins of Evil. So we begin with a prologue that takes place, I'm going to say, about 20 years before the film starts, where Baron Hartog's sister has been consumed by a female vampire. He goes to her grave and he steals her shroud, which, according to the magic of this film, apparently a vampire cannot be buried during the day in her coffin if she doesn't have her shroud. So he uses it to force a confrontation with her. The vampire then hypnotizes him, and he takes out a shovel and decapitates her. And Yazzie, I think you can testify, and Vern later when he gets nicely seated on the train. One of the best decapitations I've ever seen on film. I
Best.
actually think
The
decapitations are nowhere
here.
near as good now.
Yeah, look, if you are not here for the boobs, you're here for the blood. That's what I always go to be these kind of B movies too. I say I'm here either for the blood or for the boobs, but this one gives you both. I mean, that's why I like the. I mean, this is the best. That's why this has a special place in the cult because uh, it has both, and the decapitation and that the opening that you just said, like right after the decapitation we get the credits, and I say okay, that's the way to start the movie. I really like that, how the way that they started, and that shroud, actually I think we can like stay on it a little bit because that actually, yeah, the beginning and that bar, and yeah, that is so Hammer. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is like that misty gothic, that's typical like Hammer. But then we get this
Absolutely.
new
No,
thing,
the
this
smoke machines
shroud.
were 50% of their budget.
Yeah, the smoke machine always comes to help. You see, we talked about it in understand in Detour. That comes to help. And here, that shroud, it adds something to the vampire myth that I found really fascinating because it like I don't it's like, is it about the garments and like that, or like want to add to the mystery of that creature that we expect that something that comes out of that would be like a monster, but then suddenly that like chiffon uh, fabric like falls, and then we see this iconic, beautiful blonde lady that it's coming to seduce, and the vampire. I don't know
With huge
if
boobs,
that's, yeah, with like right at the beginning we get that like the booze in her like right there, and that I don't know if that shroud was, because I've never seen it anywhere else, that because it says also here in the film, it's not also in the book that you have for getting out of the tomb, the coffin, you need the shroud, and then for getting in, also you need the shroud. That like here, Marcel, it kind of steals it at the end. That I don't know why. So just like put the crucifix on. I don't know, like that.
And
I
it
don't know.
takes
It's
on
like
a
for
symbolic significance throughout
yeah,
the film.
so
It takes
why?
on a
That's my
symbolic
question.
significance throughout the film.
What? I don't.
Because it's the vampire's weakness. That's the vampire's weakness.
Oh, that plays to the
Because
weakness in the.
yeah,
Oh,
yes,
okay. Oh,
yeah, yeah. You've always got to have a vampire's weakness. All right. Well, moving on
and
to
then
Act
the
One. Act
nightgown,
One takes place.
Please, we have to talk
Oh my
about
God,
this, like the Diaphanes
yeah.
see-through
She'd die of
nightgown that
cold.
is present.
She would die of cold.
Yeah, yeah, right there. It's like right at the beginning we see it, and that also plays an important role till the end of the film. Like goes through, and I said it now because later I want to use the outfit and this exchange of the outfits between the two girls to make a point. That's why I just wanted to like say that, keep that in mind, that every piece of cloth or shroud or nightgown has something to say later.
And the
In
fact that
my
they're all white.
like
That the
sheer
vampires
white,
all wear white.
grayish, still exactly. So
So moving
okay,
on,
go ahead.
about
And
a
okay, do
decade
you want to?
later,
You want?
I couldn't hear you. What?
No. I wanted to say, like, do you want me to say, like, this actually is exactly like how the novel and how the novella begins, but the novella actually like exactly just like that. It changes like the narrative, but just like the movie, it starts by a narrative, and but it's more ambiguous in the novel. That I just this like a few hours ago I just like go through it again, and I see like how it's also like it it begins like introducing this creature that it's coming out. And it's really the movie is so true and loyal to the narration form of the book. That's what I. And also this is important because later I want to say talk about that, how they use it to fight the censorship. That's why it matters, this comparison to the book. That's why it matters. Sorry, go ahead.
Excellent point. We're going to get to the novel when we get through the plot summary, because I don't want to spend too much time summarizing the plot, because this is not a movie about plot. This is a movie about boobs. Am I wrong, Yazzie?
Indeed, it is a movie about boobs. Yeah, totally.
So
Go ahead, sorry.
about a decade later, we're at a ball being held by our favorite general, played by whose name is Spielsdorf, and he is played by Peter Cushing in, I think, the smallest role. I haven't seen every Hammer film, but I've seen darn near every Hammer film, and I believe this is the smallest role he's had in any Hammer film, where he just appears in the beginning and then at the end. But he is holding a ball for his niece, and a countess comes who lives nearby, and she has a niece who is named or who is calling herself Marcella, and then a pale stranger who dressed in Bela Lugosi's Dracula outfit comes and tells the Countess something in her ear, and the Countess goes and says, I have to leave. I have a friend who's dying. Will you look after my niece? And the general says, yes, of course. And the niece is invited into the home. This is something Vern referred to last week, of course, which is a vampire trope, which they can't wreak havoc unless you invite them in. And we aren't going to talk too much about this in terms of, because she doesn't have a lot of appearances in the film, but the Countess is really one of the sexier characters, actually. She, in the film, despite the fact that she's not in any of the sex scenes. But I do have a lot of questions that I'm going to address to Yazzie, who's read the novel, about just who the heck the guy wearing Bela Lugosi's old cloak is, because this film doesn't explain it. And in the two sequels, he is there as well, but and is referred to as the Count Kernstein. But again, he
Or
does
the
the
man
exact
in
same thing he
black.
does here. He just kind of shows up. We don't know exactly what his role is. He seems to be in control of these vampires or something. But we'll get to that once I get to the plot summary. But yeah, he just kind of shows up every once in a while, and then he's shown at the end laughing. So yeah, he's just a mysterious man in black. So
So
uh,
I can say
Laura,
something about the. Can I say something about the man in black? The guy, the mysterious guy, because they're like different.
oh, you can solve
That
that mystery for us. Yeah.
yeah, that mysterious guy made a lot of controversial, like, and a lot of controversy and a lot of fight between the, like, the feminist reads of this movie and, like, the others. And but because they say that he's there and he kind of, like, mm, it seems like that he is the man in charge, and he is the one who is pulling the strings, and he's the one who, like, uh, uh telling these women what to do. But to me, the way I like to look at it, the way, like, I always look at every movie, and I like to turn it and switch it from a, like, feminine point. To me, this mysterious guy is just like a butler. He's just there to help these women, like, find their, and, like, get feet, or, like, I don't see him as the one pulling the strings. And I you can also look at him as, like, a, because that's also a Hammer thing, as a family power to these the vampires, or, like, kind of Adam's family and the family of misfits, and uh, kind of that. But to me, I prefer to see him as someone who is facilitating these ladies feeding, or kind of uh grab the, you know tell them, like, warn them about the dangers. He's there to serve. He's not there to, like, play the role of a patriarch. No, he's there to serve.
Well, in the sequels he
That
is. In the sequels he orders them around. But let's ignore that,
but
because
no, no. Why
those
it
aren't the movies we're
matters
talking
here?
about.
I'll tell you why. I tell you why. Because when they were making this one, there were no plans about the sequels. Am I right? They were, like, they they had no plans about making a
For
sequel.
people on replay, correct.
So, I'm pretty sure that he's just there. At least at this point, to me, he looks like more of a servant than someone who
He
tells
reminds
them
me
what
of
to do.
somebody we talked about last week when we were discussing the Tony Scott The Hunger, the Dan Hedaya detective in The Hunger. who just kind of shows up and you expect him to be part of the plot, and he just isn't.
And just
So,
because I mentioned Tim Burton, to me
like
looks like
maybe a
Headless Horseman, like Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow, a bit. Like
yeah, oh
I
yeah,
kind of
oh yeah,
feel like
I can see
Tim
that. Yeah,
Burton
the
got the
Johnny
look
Depp
from
gone.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's good. But all right, moving on with the plot. Believe me, we're already 45 minutes into a 90-minute film at this point. So the Countess leaves, and Laura, who is the general's niece, and this Marcella, who is actually Carmilla under an assumed name, form a relationship, and uh, um, Carmilla becomes obsessed with her, and eventually she has a nightmare where literally a pussy attacks her, and afterwards,
Okay, you said it. You said it.
a little on the nose with the symbolism there, but hey, nobody ever accused Hammer of being subtle. I mean, it's in their name. It's a hammer. Uh, and
Yeah, so I'm gonna
um,
stop you. I'm gonna stop you. I have like so many things to say here. And I just want to ask Vern that where he
that's
is
what
or
you're here
when
for.
he's gonna
Uh, yeah, he's
so
between
okay, Vern,
classes, but yeah,
let me
he'll let
know.
us know when he's back.
Vern, if anytime that you wanted to like jump in, please cut
Well,
us
he wrote it. He
and
wrote in the
like say
comments. He'll let us
because we
know when
can
he's back. I'm keeping track of
okay,
the
because
comments.
we
He's gonna
like
write in
go
the
on
comments
and on and on. So yeah, so you said
when
it.
he's back. He's
You
between
said it.
buses.
All right, so you said it. The shots, the dreams. I found actually the dreams, that B movie aspect that I was talking about, that allows you to experience, and you mm, like here. That's the example of that. Like you want to show how important the dream aspect of the vampire story, the vampire seduction is, with the budget that you have, with things at your disposal. What they do here is, first of all, they change the colors. They make up, like, they shot it in black and white, which I found really interesting. And they add this cat, which is obviously because vampires mostly like shapeshift into bats and wolves. And here it's a cat to symbolize the pussy, literally, and being choked and smothered by a cat. And also the I think the comedy aspect of it, to me today, is that it again, because of the budget, it looked like a cheap rug, like suffocating her.
Well, it had to
That
be on
I
purpose, Yazzie. They did it
oh
twice. It had to be
honey,
purposefully comic. They had to have done that purposely to be comic. Like,
yeah,
quite honestly, because
but
they
actually
could have
that was
just filmed. They
really
could have
good,
filmed somebody's house cat running around if they weren't deliberately
right?
attempting at humor.
That is so beautiful to create like this dream aspect and separate it from all the colorful, this beautiful pastel colorful like things of the film, and also give it a bit of like horrorish aspect, to say like the dream, the black and white, the nightmare that she's going through and turning, and the desires, and the I think that was really nice and well done,
Well, I
to be
can't speak for
honest.
everyone,
Even
but
the like
when I dream, I don't dream in color. I dream in black and white. My dreams are always in black and white. The only time I've ever remember color dreams is when I had a fever or something. So, and that has to be a common experience or a semi-common experience. So dreams are, in black and white in reality. So it's kind of the flip
oh,
flop of Wizard of Oz,
so
so to speak. Because the
and
dreamland is actually what's in black and
that's it, the dreams are so the other thing that you skipped, and I found it really interesting, is the dialogue between Carl and Laura in the ball. So we have this beautiful, like, fancy ball with Peter Cushing and like Don Adams, and everyone is there, and like these looks are exchanging and everything. And then here comes our star, Ingrid Pitt, as Camilla, and like everyone exchanging looks and all. And the dialogue between Carl and Laura, like when she says that every all the men here are looking at that lady, but she is looking at you. And then I think that this is where they unintentionally captured uh this 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 queer experience. I can say like this inside joke kind of, because Carl, he he says, no, she's looking at you, to Laura. He sees it. And I, and then the minute that he says it, we get that sinister music of ding, ding, ding. And I really like that because
Something
I
that people
really,
who are, oh, there, you're back. You're back.
yeah, don't you think? Because that is right there. That is right there, that sometimes the man like Carl, he clocks it out. He notices that short moment, that look of lust, I can say, like that look of,
His gaydar is very strong. He has the
yes,
strong gaydar of the two.
very strong. You know, why? Because
Very
he
important. And
knows
you're
that
right. I shouldn't have
feeling.
skipped
He is familiar with that look of desire. He is familiar with that look of desire, and he recognizes it. I think that was so lush and like so mysterious and so subtle and well done, because mm, w- you know the fact that all the filmmaker and all the actresses, everyone, like, there is this documentary in like after the film, that it's very short. There are like a few interviews, and they're constantly insisting on the fact that they were not making a lesbian vampire movie. And like even like some of the actresses, they say like, no, we didn't even know what lesbian were. And then you know and then you suddenly see this very subtle moment of exchange, and I think that was so beautiful and so well done. Even though if it was unintentional, it captures the moment, and right now it is like compelling to a group of people, and they see it and they enjoy it. So I think that is so
Yeah,
worth
it is.
mentioning and
It
talking.
is. It is one of the reasons why this is a film that one of about 6 or 7 moments in the film that people who are part of what they call the queer film culture use when they cite this film as an inspiration. I think it was one of the podcasts that you sent me. There was a lesbian woman who said that it was after watching this film that she realized that she liked girls. Um, Not because of that scene, obviously, but because of, well, all the boobs. But we will definitely discuss in great detail the boobs
I mean,
once
who
we get into the
wouldn't?
plot.
These women are beautiful. I mean, I told you, I said, what is this? I mean, they didn't have the technology, but they had the CGI to make those pretty perfect boobs. And like,
Yeah,
so what was happening? It's so like candy to the eye. Really, eye candy all along.
it's that good English and Polish diet. It has to be
Yeah. So, but
lots of
later I
dairy.
can tell a story. I can tell a story about like actually, yeah, there were like
The
some
fangs.
casting problems and
Is this the fangs problem, or the woman who swore she
no,
got her
the
boobs
body
that big by
shape
eating
for the
yogurt?
body casting, the body
Yeah, they
casting,
fired
and like they yeah, they so,
Ingrid
but
Pitt
we're
at
not
one point,
talking about
and
that
she went and ate.
exactly.
Yeah, she okay. But we'll get that. We'll get that. Yeah,
We
the
get
Hammer
that later.
Studios
We
is
get that
not
later.
any different than anyone who makes great art is probably an asshole. Let's just establish that right off the bat. You know, the people who make these are not usually good people. So, all right. So yeah, we'll move on. So yeah, so she Camilla bites her on the boob, which I thought was a very neat change of the vampire lore, because if you think about the amount of jaw muscle and strength that you'd have to penetrate somebody's neck, why wouldn't you choose a boob instead, where it's just nice and soft and fatty, if you're just attempting to suck the life out of them? But Laura dies. A doctor is summoned and says that it's anemia, and
Yeah.
um, oh, and his cure had been to give her vegetables, meat, and a drop of port every night to get rid of the nightmares. So, old time doctoring at its best.
And she also said that she ate like a lot of yogurt. And I was listening to that interview and I would say like, "Oh, so yogurt does that to
Oh,
your
we're back on
body?"
Ingrid. We're back on Ingrid Pitt's
Yeah.
boobs. Yeah, which I
Yeah, and
understand. Yes, yeah, yeah. No,
I
that
said
story is
I
bullshit.
said
Yeah, obviously she had them done.
no.
She had them
No, I said
done. She had them done.
if yogurt does that to your body, I love dairy, and like from now on till the end of my life, I'm gonna eat only and only dairies and yogurt because the miracle of yogurt is right there. So yeah, continue. We like let's continue.
Yeah, we'll get back to the boobs. I promise. But especially when Vern is back on the train, we'll have a large discussion of boobs in this film. One of the interesting things about this relationship is that it seems to be reciprocal, which the second act it really isn't. Uh, uh, Before she dies, Laura actually is like, to Camilla, please do not leave me. I'll die. Which we'll get hint that comes back later. So at that point, Camilla decides to get while the getting is good after announcing that Laura is dead, and we see her and the Countess a second time, where they stage a fake carriage accident and trick a guy named Mr. Morton, who is played by George Cole, into inviting Camilla to stay. Again, going back to that trope where a vampire can't wreak havoc in your house unless you invite them in. And this scene, I think, is from the novella, if I'm not mistaken, almost word for
Is
word, and it's
exactly
very, very, very clever how she basically gets Morton to beg her to stay in his house to fulfill that vampire trope.
exactly. So in the
Next,
book, sorry. I have to say this about because it says very beautifully in the book because this is the moment in the book that it changes the narrative. It becomes from the first person narrative of Laura and she talks from the grave, as a dead person, telling the story of how she becomes the victim of someone
well, the
who
novella with the
like
found papers, right? With the found the
yeah
conclusion that
and
they
then
found
she
her
talks about
yeah.
exactly and she says in details the experience and she says how Camilla insinuates herself into the households as a guest, and this scheme that she has. And then I think that is exactly what later plays in the, because I think it's so important to say that the novel is like 1872. It means 26 years before Dracula. So whatever you see or read in the Dracula movies and the novel, one of them that you have to be invited, or like the way that the vampires has this scheme, and like the way they hovering over like women, and this, they all were here, they come from a female vampire, this is they all been in Camilla, that later been used. And I think this is so
It's
important
important
to
also to
mention.
note that this novel came out 22 years or 27 years before Dracula.
Yeah, I just said, oh, you didn't hear me? That's what I said. I said it's so
So
important to like remember that all these tropes, they weren't come from Bram Stoker. They were all here before that. So yeah, ladies.
okay, so luckily, we are because looks like we've got somebody else in the audience. Hey, hello, Phil. Good to see you. Good to see everyone. Okay, um, Carmilla has tricked her way into Mr. Morton's house, and he spots the daughter, whose name is Emma, and forms the same, basically forms the same kind of relationship with her, but Emma is not buying it. She's not in. I don't know if she's just not into women, or she just, but she just thinks that you know. I think you were the one, Yazzie, who sent me the podcast where somebody says at the end of it, you would just, if you asked Emma, she was a lesbian, really? Gosh, I never knew. She just, I thought, I thought, but you have
Yeah, they were
a
keep
wonderful.
ignoring that. They were keep ignoring it. And Ingrid Pitt, later she changes her mind, and she actually made write a book with the lesbian vampires characters. But Madeline Smith, to the end of her days, keep ignoring this, and like she was keep saying that, yeah, I was this innocent ingenue, her like exact words, and they like put me with force into this, and I didn't know anything. And like there is this famous story that when during the sex scene, they were tell her that you have to act like you're having an orgasm, and she says, what is an orgasm? Because she like they cast her right after Catholic school, so she was really this naive little high school girl that they cast. And that's why we see like all these weird actings from her, and that those bizarre eyes and stuff. It's
That's
because she was
I'm
actually,
going to I'm going to defend the studio in this. She was lying about her age, and she was actually 26 years old. So all of that is after the fact,
oh,
kind of. Hey, she couldn't get a
but
job. She couldn't get a
she
job in movies,
says on.
and she was blaming it on being typecast because of this film. So I'm going to defend Hammer Studios on this. She knew what she was getting into. Also, and I'm not going to use this as any sort of a kink shaming. This was not her first appearance on screen, where let's just say she was naked with another woman. So there's that. So yeah, yeah, yeah. But we'll get into that when we get into the meat. So
No,
to quickly,
can I say something? It is so interesting that, just it's important because it was part of our conversation last week, that we say like the changes that happen in the industry and in the to like grab more audiences and drag more audiences to the movies, the way they were trying to talk about and like commercialize this movie, and they were keep trying to hide this lesbian aspect, which is like so obvious and right there, and the right there
It's
part of the
it's the
story of
best
the
part
film.
of it's the best
Like
part of the
compare it,
damn movie.
and exactly compare it to the Hunger, like the way that they were trying to like speak to the LGBTQ audience and like try to like drag them to the theaters and like sell the movie to a like brought more like vast majority of audiences, and they were trying to make a movie to speak to all type of like the bigger demographic, I can say. But how it changes, and that's why I always say that how much the audience are important, and it's not just the movies or the writers or the filmmakers, the directors, how much we as the audience are important and change the shape of the movies that we go and watch. If like we ignore the fact that how many women were try to like fight for this freedom of nudity and sexuality in the movies, and we ignore the fight that they had, and we just keep talking about the exploitation, and then the movies that we get become so fake and like such like everything tastes like cardboard. But this is our role as the audience, because we have to appreciate the fact that these movies exist, and some like someone like Ingrid Pitt, she was proud of her femininity and she was proud of her body, and she wasn't there by force. She was there and she wanted to like give it all in. So I think that
I'm proud of
that's
her
another
body.
thing that is so important
Everyone
about
should be
this film.
proud of Ingrid Pitt's body.
Exactly, everyone should be. Everyone should be, and that's why we have to value these movies instead of like keep talking about like you read like some critics, and they're talking about like, no, this is the wrong take, which I'm going back to. But just for now that the conversations get here, it like I just wanted to say to appreciate all the work and the beauty of these ladies as a woman of the audience, and say like, yeah.
Which sets up the next part of the plot perfectly, which is the notorious bath scene, which is either your favorite part of the film if you are part of the male gaze, or appreciate the beauty of a female body, or the sign of Hammer's inevitable descent into hellfire if you're uh, anyone else, basically. We all know which side I on this, but it is definitely the male gaze section of the film, and yet among the queer community, the scene is seen as being a part of liberation. However, we have to keep in mind it's 1970. So the scene is basically Carmilla walks in while um, um Emma is taking a bath. She strips down to the waist in front of her. Emma walks in, or while Carmilla is taking a bath, she strips down to the waist in front of her because she encourages her to take her underwear off because the beautiful dresses will not fit her as well. Then the two of them get into one of those playful lesbian pillow fights that you see in in girls' boarding school exploitation movies. Uh, but again, unlike the first relationship, the second one is completely guided by Carmilla, and Emma really is not showing any interest. So, unlike the "Please stay with me, I'll die without you" element of that first relationship, you are actually seeing a darker side of Carmilla come forward. If you could say darker for somebody who just sucked the life out of Laura's boob uh, previously, because she becomes very much the manipulator, using things like gaslighting, etc., to attempt to keep Emma with her. But Emma's father goes on a business trip to Vienna and leaves in charge a pair of very important characters,
So, okay, I'm gonna
Mademoiselle
stop you. I'm gonna stop you again.
Peridot. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm gonna stop you. I'm
Go
gonna
right
stop
ahead.
you
I know I
because
skipped a
you
bunch. I was trying to
forget.
get through the.
I want to talk about again something like the moment of between Carl and uh, Laura before that we see that I said like that's very subtle and very important. Again, I want to point out like something very like lesbian and LGBT and also so sensual. You know that it's the scene between when they're in the garden and like when Camilla put that like the flower crown, the wreath garland on Laura's head, and they have this conversation, and that moment, uh, that moment actually, I have to be honest, I can't remember if it was in the novel, so I think it was all created here, and it was not in the novel. That's why I want to point it out, because the beauty of it is that the moment of confusion of Laura that you mentioned earlier, you said like in one of the podcasts that we listened to that they talked about it, and the lady said these ladies were so beautiful that you feel like, oh, maybe I am, maybe I'm a lesbian and I didn't know it. So what happens here was, and I feel it was so true, is like when Laura like tells Camilla that you're teasing me like Carl, and I found this moment so beautiful because she doesn't know how to process the the confusion
She
and
may
this,
not even know what a
no,
lesbian is. She probably doesn't even know what a lesbian
exactly,
is.
just like Susan Sarandon in Hunger. That's why this moment in the film, like I saw it because it immediately reminded me of Susan Sarandon's character confusion, Sarah in Hunger, and I like put them next to each other, and I said, she doesn't know, like Laura, she doesn't know how to process this. And she compares it to the only feelings that she knows, which is her relationship with Carl. And, and actually, this, now that I'm saying it out loud, I kind of remember how it was in the book. And it was in the book. But the way that it was in the book was that, like, Laura in the book, she says, could she, it means Camilla, be a boy and like my suitor in like masquerade? I think that was the word used in the book. That she said, could it be another
Yeah,
suitor
they
in
said that
masquerade?
there's something there's a line kind of like that in the movie as well, where she said, would that you were a good looking man or something to that effect, you know,
You and I
and
found it like so
they also hint at
beautiful.
it. They also hint at it
Isn't
when she's
it like,
reading the naughty story, and
oh
she's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
I never
exactly.
read
Yeah, and then I think I what I found so beautiful about this is like this is exactly look like two girls, or like any kind of relationship that people don't know how to start this, and then they start like saying things like, that's why I said the cloth or like those nightgowns and these like the any kind of like cloth are important in this film because they like Camilla kind of offers her what she has through this, and she flirts like that because that's the only thing that she knows how to do, through like putting her into this beautiful nightgown, for example, or like tell her like, you know, for example, right now, if like it happens between two girls, they say like, "Oh, girl, you have a beautiful makeup." Like, that I found that in the middle of this movie and like Hammer and all that, I found
It's
this
flirty.
very innocent.
It's flirty, but it's discreet. It's flirty, but it's discreet. And
Exactly.
it's, I think, and talking from my male gaze point of view, it's more of a turn on because of that. I actually found that more erotic than I did the topless pillow fight. Although I did like the topless pillow fight.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what the point that I wanted to make. I wanted to say it, and this is the good writing. That's actually, you can't
Yeah,
ignore this. That how
because
beautiful
the
script was
nudity is
there.
surface, whereas this kind of gives you that tingle, that kind of, ooh, is this really going to happen? Kind of a feeling,
And that
you
is
know,
my
because
point when I say B movies.
that slow anticipation.
That's exactly what I said at the beginning of the room, that why B movies matter for these moments. For this tiny sentence that it's like this little moment that happens. This is inspiring to a generation of filmmakers. That little thing here.
It's,
That's
it's,
why we have to like value
it's
and
like
watch. Yeah.
it's like Hugh Hefner said.
That's it.
The only people who say they love threesomes are people who never had them.
That's true.
Because
That's true.
when you actually achieve the reality of it, you know, it's all about the coordination and what have you. It's the anticipation of it. It is the desire for it and your desire to want to see it that is erotically charged, not the actual fruition. So where you see them kind of playfully topless take fighting each other, you know, that's titillating, but because it's not set up the way this scene is, you don't have the erotic charge because you weren't put into a mentality of, gosh, is this going to happen? It's going to happen. Oh my God, it happened. Yeah. But, which takes me on to my favorite part of this film, actually, because Emma immediately grows sick and has the same 2 marks on her boob, which, of course, means that Camilla has been at it again. Has the same dream involving being attacked by a pussy, again, kind of on the nose, but and her father goes away on a trip to Venice and is puts her governess, played by Kate O'Mara, Mademoiselle Peridot, in one of my favorite performances in this film, and puts her in charge, and immediately realizing that the only way she's going to be able to gain access to Emma is through her. Camilla seduces Kate O'Mara, and Kate O'Mara's character is very, very interesting from um, the feminist criticism of this film, which is correct, and also the queer culture defense of this film, um, which, and this is a case where I think both are correct, because she is a stern governess character who is so typically or stereotypically lesbian, pent up lesbian, suppressed lesbian in her dress and in her demeanor, that the critics of this film can truthfully point out that, okay, what you're basically saying is, if you're intelligent, well dressed, and have a good sense of organization, you are automatically a lesbian, because women can't have brains unless they at least like other women. which I'm going to say it from a male gaze point of view. That is most likely what the producers of this film were going for. But the relationship that develops between the two of them is, and that's what the queer culture people defend this as, is so charged and so erotic, so much more erotic than anything that goes on with the Emma character, who is at this point sick in bed because just like in The Hunger, if it happens to you once, you immediately get sick. Just like what happened to Susan Sarandon in The Hunger, try the gay once and you've got a deadly illness. But the the stern lesbian being brought out of her shell by the more open and free woman who is, yes, a vampire, but basically living her best life, and is one of the best, most erotically charged sections of this film. Now, part of it is because of O'Mara's just wonderful performance of this woman, because you see her as she is broken down by this relationship and becomes basically subservient to this vampire. And moving ahead to the climax of this film is begging her to take her with her, and because she has become basically this woman's slave. And this changeover of of the person who is used to being in charge to the submissive is, and again, I'm saying they did this without knowing they were doing it, is one of the better and more erotic parts of this film on that level of somewhat um, you know subdom uh, relationships. But if I'm a feminist and I'm looking at that, then what you are doing is you're taking the strongest woman character in the film and turning her into a subservient slave to the woman who basically sleeps around and has big tits, which guilty is charged. That's probably what they were doing. But between the lines, it is actually a rather subtle look at same-sex relationships. So, this is a case where both sides can be correct. But because, long
So
story short,
I want to say something.
Carmilla gets around town.
No,
Oh, go
hold
ahead.
on,
You're
hold on,
interrupting
hold
me.
on, hold on. You're like skipping the best character, because like this is so important. You talked about it so beautifully, and guess what? Like Laura Mulvey in her like gaze theory, she talks about Madame Parano, and she goes on and on and on about like she calls her actually like I'm like quoting, she calls her sinister become like sinister became intellectual. That's like her words to describe her. And she says the ultimate lesbian governess figure. And she says like the way that she teaches German and like say like a few words like eyebrows in German is way more sexualized than all the other like ladies in the film. And I really like that Laura Mulvey picked this character that you were like talking about right now, and she uses it as a male gaze and explain the gaze. And what I was thinking actually was that the age, we see uh Ingrid Pitt, they like, if we want to look at it from the male gaze, yes, the man who made this film, like they were attempting to show you that like this, she's old and kind of, this is like the sexuality inverted because of her being old, just like Madame Parano. But what happens actually to me as a woman watching this is that, again, unintentionally, they making it very gay, first of all, and then very more powerful sexually, like as someone who knows her way, not even around women, the younger women, but also around men. The way that these two characters find their way around men, and like they uh order men around, and they say, no, you're not allowed to like put these garlic there, you are not allowed to do that. Or the way that Camilla, Ingrid Pitt, she disappears right in front of these men's eyes, the men that are like keep looking at her, but they're, you know, the thing is they're feeling so uncomfortable around her that they some that, you know, they don't see her, she becomes invisible to them. And I really like this allegory that she was standing right there and then she disappears to their eyes. It's because of her presence as a woman, and like as an aged woman, we can say, like with the years and years of experience, if we want to look at the character like that. And this powerful sexual thing with like no fear to like get naked any moment, and like she
Okay,
has
well,
more
this is a
power and
very good.
sexuality.
Yeah, this is actually a very good digression. But I'm going to interrupt it to kind of because the film I was referring to earlier, Daughters of Darkness, which came out a year later with uh, Delphine Seyrig of the French New Wave, it reverses this with the vampire, and um, again, I don't recommend the film. Yeah, I found it really dull, and the sex is not that hot. But but it is a very important part of a queer cinema, the lesbian vampire trope. But this began it. That this was the film that set that in motion and created the rules for the next 2 decades of lesbian vampire film. And the second thing I would refer to is something that they said in the podcast that you sent me the link to. What is gayer than vampires? Quite honestly, if you can't make your vampires gay, who can you? Because there's nothing quite as gay as a vampire.
Yeah, actually, I like what Ingrid Pitt said later in her life, that she said vampires are dead, they have no gender. So no gender is better than like try to like label them as gay or lesbian or straight. And I really like that for her as a like real person in the real life. I found that really interesting, that
But it takes
the growth, her
it
growth.
takes the transgressive
Yeah.
element of the films away. It takes the transgressive element of the films away when you look at it like that. Don't you think? I mean, because isn't that part of the erotic charge, is the actual transgressive nature of a same-sex relationship between two big boobed women?
No, I think this is kind of like pushing the boundaries and like looking at a taboo subject in a like the way that it appeals to like more people and more understanding of sort. Because I understand what you're getting at, like because we have to label things to recognize them, but also by labeling things and giving the recognition, we kind of like separate them from, making them minorities of sort, which we try to avoid here.
Which
I kind of understand what you're trying to
which
say, but
moves very nicely into the next plot point, which is of course the character of Renton, because that what you were speaking of in terms of vampires not having a gender uh, goes to some one of the criticisms from the queer community of the film, which is the relationship between Renton and Carmilla, because Renton, of course, uh, uh, is the kind of in a traditional vampire film, he'd be the male hero coming to save the damsel in distress. But this is not a traditional vampire film, and he hears in town that several women have had the life sucked out of them through their boobs, and we actually witness this happening. The doctor who is actually treating Emma is killed by which we actually see by Carmilla. But they are following his orders of using garlic flowers and crucifixes and all of your traditional vampire tropes to protect Emma. But he is thoroughly convinced that the vampire is Peridot, is the Cato Mara character, and so Carmilla seduces him, not as a lover, but to use him in order to be able to gain access to Emma. She hypnotizes him, seduces him, and he has the garlic and the crucifixes removed, and this sets up the climax of the film, where this is the point where, spoiler alerts, but it's not going to spoil too much of anything because these are old tropes. But the climax occurs when the Peter Cushing character actually returns with the gentleman from the prologue, the Baron. What was his name? I might have to look. Hartog, Baron Hartog, whose sister had been killed by a vampire, and who had taken the shroud with the shroud, and he retells the scene from the prologue of the film to illustrate the nature of the vampire, and he takes them to see the portrait of the vampire Carmilla, who, of course, the general Peter Cushing and the father, Mr. Morton, recognize as being the woman that they have invited into their house. So they send Carl ahead to attempt to protect Emma, but it's too late because Carmilla turns and kills Renton, sucking the life out of him, and then is about to take Emma back to her grave as some sort of slave. But she, again, the lore says can't be buried without that shroud, setting up a showdown. So this is where the climax becomes the town with pitchforks and torches going to get the vampire. Only it's this crew of Morton, Carl, and the Peter Cushing character, the general, using the shroud as bait, and quite daringly, Hartog decides that he is going to get her in her grave when she's resting at night. But he says before that, she has to feast, and she has to have a big feast. And so she is shown with the scene that I had mentioned earlier, where Mademoiselle Peridot is begging her to take her with her. She kills her and sucks the life out of her, and she's like, "Ooh, that's a big meal. I need a rest." And she starts to take Emma back to her grave, but of course she can't go back to her grave without the shroud. So and actually be buried. So all she can do is there is rest, and Heart Dog um, decides that the time to do it is at night for some reason, which didn't make any sense to me. But maybe it
No,
did
it
to
doesn't
you
make
who
any
read
sense
the
to
novel.
me either. That's okay, but I'll tell you why that's okay. But something, because
points
wait.
for Paul.
We have to like go back again a little bit, because I was watching this last night with my very dear African American friend, and she said something at the about the doctor, and I really love that, because like the moment that the doctor diagnoses it, and he said that she is uh, in anemic, and like you know, kind of like, yeah, she just doesn't want to eat to keep her figure, or like uh there's just like blood loss, all the like natural things about women. That doctor, he considered that, like, yeah, because women are generally sick. And she said that how much like she can relate to this, and she loved the movie because she said how much the doctor, that male doctor, is like so inept. And she said that uh it happens a lot to her as an African American woman, that because she's also a doctor herself, she said that how much like she has been ignored by doctors, because they think like generally women are sick. And this is exactly was perfectly depicted here, that they say, yeah, it's okay. And reminded me, honestly, of like, with because it happened right after that dream sequence, was the Elm Street, and how the kids and problems of kids and young generation is being ignored by the adults, and they don't see it till the moment that they're dying, and they finally pay attention to them. Which is something really interesting in the vampire movies in general, and like horror in general, that uh when the parents become like toxic and abusive, and when the monster comes to help, and yeah, that like we leave that aside. But now that you said that, it kind of, she said that when Carmilla said that she wants to be fed again and all that, it kind of like, I found that, I saw that, and I said,
Baron
okay,
Hartog. Baron Hartog said that.
yeah, maybe they went for that like parasitic kind of like lesbian trope, but I don't see it, again, just because I try to see like everything from the feminine point of view, and like give it that kind of sort. I see it as like
Well,
this.
my theory
Uh,
is that he gets extra experience points for doing it at night, because it's a harder level, like on a video
no,
game.
but how
That's
I
my
see it is that this kind of like codependency in lesbian relationships, or in vampire movies, or any kind of like dependency in relationships, and like this. But we had it also in Hunger, that is kind of like, but in both movies, like it's kind of
I
like
love
prominent
you
example of,
all. I love you all.
yeah, you see this like trauma bonding, something, like in and I wish like where Vern like just left us. I wish like he was here, because he could like speak to that.
He'll be
I don't
back.
know where he
He just caught a train that doesn't have.
went. So yeah, so I wanted to say, like, that the trauma bonding, you know somebody inflicting pain on you, and then try to like soothing it, so you associated the
Stockholm
pain
syndrome
with,
too.
yeah, so you associated the pain with them, but also soothing of that pain with them. And I think that was so beautifully, again, unintentionally, but very well, like quite profound in this film. That's what I love. When the movie was over, I said, okay, this is so beautiful here, because you want to say, like, yeah, like we like using the vulnerability of the young and innocence and being seduced by older power and all that. Okay, but it goes kind of like both way, like an addiction of sort, because when they're dying, they calling Marcella's name, and she's not happy, because we see her that she doesn't like death. It's not because of the crucifix and stuff. She doesn't
She's a
She's
very, very
tired
sympathetic
of over
vampire.
yeah, she's tired of like outliving her loves, you know she's tired of that. And exactly like Miriam, we see that, like, the same thing happened with Miriam. She wasn't happy. And I think this is why these movies, like, are so compelling to lesbians, or like to women, because they were all in the surface, you see them as like a predators and stuff, but no one goes like see that the second layer, which is like, yeah, that parasite that you want to see has also feelings, and it's also in pain, and it's mutual, and it's codependency, and this relationship, and I found it
Yeah, you can't
really
identify.
beautiful,
You
to be
can't. You
honest.
can't identify with a lesbian vampire, but you can empathize. And
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Which I think this is the opposite of the Hunger in that way, because of course in the Hunger, um, Catherine Deneuve is set up from the beginning as the villain of that piece. You're never actually rooting or empathizing with her. Whereas this and the European version of the lesbian vampire film, especially the French and the Belgian versions, uh, really you are supposed to be secret, although it has to have that happy ending. You are supposed to actually be rooting for the lesbian vampire in this, because they are the transgressive ones. Now, the fact that she's wreaked havoc in a village and just killed like 20 peasant girls uh, isn't supposed to play into your mind. That she just does what she has to do because she was sad about it afterwards, and she had real feelings for, well, the upper class. She obviously, the peasant girls were just food. So, and which brings kind of a class element into it too, which we can maybe discuss later. But to finish off the movie's plot, they used the shroud, kept her back into her coffin, and then at night, Peter Cushing drives a stake through her heart, and then in the second best beheading scene I've ever seen in a film, beheads her. The camera then goes back to the painting, which fades as the skin falls off the figure in the painting, and you see a vampire skeleton emerge, very Dorian Gray style, which maybe makes no sense, but I don't care. It's fucking awesome and one of the best scenes in the film. So I'm going to say keep it. But then the thing that makes no sense, and again we get back to our figure in black is just shown laughing, who again we find out in the two sequels is actually the Baron Kernstein, but he has absolutely no role in this film except to show up every once in a while, and have fangs and dress like the headless horseman. And the credits roll, and we all go home. So yeah, I think we've done a pretty good plot summary there, don't you think? Yeah. Okay. Yazzie, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Well, I guess I will fill time. The director of this film was a man by the name of, and he's so famous I have to look him back up, Roy Ward Baker. And his most famous film was 1958's A Night to Remember, which was a Titanic film, which is credited with the creation of the disaster film genre, and is actually rated as one of the 100 best films, British films of all time by the British Film Institute. And the screenplay was by a man by the name of Tudor Gates, whose only previous screen credit to this was for the movie Barbarella with Jane Fonda, directed by her then husband Roger Vadim, and was more overtly comic in nature. But you can see the comedy that Yazzie was referring to throughout this film. But this was also the very, very last film that Hammer Studios made using American funding. So after this, companies like EMI and Rank would be financing their films instead of American companies like AIP and Universal, who had done the rest of them. And now it's a good time, and hopefully we can get Yazzie back, because otherwise this will be a lecture. I'm going to send out invites to see if anybody wants to come up and speak, just because I don't want to just sit here and talk by myself. But I know Morgan's with his family, but I'm going to send the invites up. They're not mandatory, but just to see. But how this film was actually seen at the time and how it's seen now depended on how big a Hammer horror fan you were. Because if you are a big Hammer horror film, you see this as the beginning of the nadir of Hammer as they kind of collapsed into the same camp that the Universal horror films had collapsed into in the United States, where you had replaced truly scary films like the Todd Browning's Freaks and the original Frankenstein and Dracula with Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, etc. However, if you are a more casual fan or a fan of horror, this film stands out because while it's not a particularly scary film in terms of, or even a gory film, it is a film that is very transgressive, and that transgression is also an emotion. I'm on record as saying I don't particularly care for horror films generally, because being scared is just not something that I like or refer to as pleasurable. But Hammer has always had a special place in my heart, because as one of the podcasts Yazzie and I were listening to prep for, there is a feeling in the horror that it's kind of cozy, and a lot of that has to do with the costumes, the set decorations, that famous Hammer staircase, the jewelry, um, and in this particular movie, the boobs, which this movie has some of the biggest boobed women outside of a Russ Meyer film, exposing their breasts, not for long periods of time, but just enough to be, and that's the word I'm looking for, transgressive. And as a transgressive work of art, that is where this film to me is worth discussing over and above a typical horror film, as something that broke the mold. Because of course after this you had the European genre of the lesbian vampire film, and vampire authors such as Anne Rice have, and I can't remember his name, but the gentleman who wrote Wolfen and the novel that last week's film, the Hunger, were based on. have pointed to this as their inspiration for the use of the vampire lore mixed with homosexuality. And for that, I think it is a historically important film. But the other thing is, it is a beautiful film to look at. Whereas previous Hammer films had been filmed in Eastman color, this is filmed in Technicolor. And if you get to watch a restored print the way Yazzie and I watched the film, it is just an incredibly gorgeous experience. And some of the horror of it is just how beautiful the surface is. And so, for the very few scenes of violence, and there are only the two beheadings and a couple of bit nipples and the killing of the doctor in this, they strike you even more because they are in such a beautiful setting. But I think I've yammered on by myself long enough. This is becoming kind of a teacher's lecture. And unfortunately, I seem to have lost Yazzie. So give me 5 seconds and see if I can back channel her through a messenger. But um, if not, I'm going to just end this room. Ah, the joys of live broadcasting. Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to end this room. Next week, we're going to have a bit of a larger crowd because we're going to have the people from Understanding Movies over here, Vern and Daniel, and we're going to be discussing the 1945 Ealing horror film, Dead of Night. So definitely, and that'll be the end of our Halloween specials. So definitely join us for that. It'll be the same time, 2:30. Morgan, you're the one guy who's left. Thank you for being here, and I hope we made good radio for you. Um, and thanks again, and we'll see you all next week. Well, you, Morgan. Have a great one.
Want to join the conversation? Every Thursday, we record on the Clubhouse app. Just follow the link in the episode description, and you can be a part of our panel.